You're never going to win a Rolex Sydney to Hobart, not normally just turning up for the day. You know, you've got to build and grow and learn as a team and get your boat right, get your team right, get your processes right. It's just like a business.
At a very young age, at 15, 16, we were chosen to represent Australia and go to the UK. We then went off, sailed in the World Championships, and you can imagine young kids from 20 countries all sailing on the Kentish coast, all learning swear words from different countries. And after the race, being the way it was in the UK in those days, you can have a lager and lime as a 16-year-old. Well, I never forget the time we were at the bar after a couple of races during the day, and as we were there drinking with these guys from Yugoslavia and France and Belgium, etc., the phone rang and the barman said, "It's 10 Downing Street on the phone. I'd like to talk to Roger or Phil." We did have a couple more races to go, but there was nothing like saying to the Prime Minister that we couldn't fit him in. And he said, "Well, how'd you like to come to my summer house?" So off we went, got all dressed up. A few champagnes later, he said, "Come on, boys, let's get down for a sail on the boat." So we went down and hopped on Morning Cloud. And that was probably the start of a wonderful career.
My first memory in life was riding on the back of his two-stroke motorbike around the suburban home in Sandy Bay. He went away to sea at just 16, and Mum always felt that in a way she lost her boy. It happened pretty suddenly, and perhaps the making of the man, his independence and self-sustainability, really. Many great stories to tell with Roger and his first wife Barbara. When they first met, Roger asked her how old she was, and she said she was 21, and she asked him the same question, and he said, "Have a guess," and she said, "Oh, about the same," and Roger left it at that. But of course Roger really was about 17 and not 21 at all, and it was a long time before Barbara knew just how much younger he was. I remember gifts such as push bikes from Germany and rafts and watches, and he's just demonstrating his care and connection to the family. Mum would always love the visits, the flowers, the cards, and certainly, it's absolutely true that her fridge was always adorned with the latest media of Roger's exploits. Whenever you talk to Dad, you'd get the stories of Roger's exploits as well, and we were all equally proud of this guy and what he's achieved.
My father was the second mate or third mate on the first ship that Roger ever went to sea on. So always sort of been familiar with the Hickman name, particularly Jim. And obviously I took the phone call when Jim rang my dad to see if he was available to take the old North Head from Hobart up to Port Douglas, and we pretty much set off from Hobart and encountered a large storm up off the northeast tip of Tasmania. It was a bombing east coast low, and we had sort of 30 to 40 knot winds and had to make a run for cover in behind Flinders Island, which involved us going through a pretty notorious piece of water called Banks Strait, and we continued on up to Port Douglas, and lots of memories sort of cruising up through the Whitsundays, and a good bunch of people on board. And then Roger, being Roger, liked the cut of my jib at that point in time and invited me to come back to Sydney and potentially do a bit of sailing leading into that summer. As it happened, it sort of proved to be one of those pivotal sort of moments in your life where Roger sort of ended up opening a door. 6 months later, I'm standing on the dock in Hobart with a Tattersall's medal around my neck, and I'd just won the Sydney to Hobart sort of first time out. So it was a pretty incredible trip.
The first I heard of Hicko was we were on the Telstra Cup, and every 5 minutes, all anyone was saying is, "Where's Hicko?" Looking over their shoulder, and turned out he was our main competition on Osmade. After that. Very successful race for Roger. Bumped into him again on the way back, having a good time in Eden and Tribunner and everywhere else that you stop. I got my first opportunity to go sailing with Roger, walk down the dock trying to find a ride on a Saturday morning for a race, and you can come with us. He recognised a couple of pommies that have been hanging around for a month or two, and the rest is history of the next sort of 5 or 6 years. A lot of people talk about teamwork and blah blah and management consulting speak and presentations, but Roger actually took it onto the water and applied it. I think, he was, when I first met him, he was always talking about whether you were a high C or a high I. He wanted to disc profile you to see how he could fit you into the right spot on a yacht. He also was not a directly outwardly outspoken advocate for women in sailing, but he just demonstrated it through his inclusion of females on his teams. He recognised that, a good team is diverse. He didn't make assumptions about what made a good team. He looked at people and he worked out where they'd fit in and how he'd get the best out of them. There was no work and sailing with Roger. They were kind of mixed together. I think, there were many eras of Hicko. I was just fortunate to be part of one 6-year era for me in terms of my sailing and work time with him. But once you're on the Hicko program, you're never really off it. You're part of the Hicko family.
His initial meeting of us was quite unique. He came along our veranda one night with his big mop of curly brown hair. He came in not the usual way that people come in with the front door. He came in the side door through the garden. Hicko was looking for a mooring for his uncle's boat, which was coming up from Hobart, and luckily we had one in front of our house. He must have known that. He swept up my father and got him involved in ocean racing, and my father bought a share in this boat called Antagonist. The boat was built by Jim Hickman, I believe, and this was in 1979, I believe. That was the time where they did the Hobart race together on Antagonist. Yeah, so that's the initial time when we met Roger. 2 years later, my father purchased a boat called Nike, and Roger skippered that boat, and they did the 1981 Sydney to Hobart with my brother. They did that race and they did very well. The friends that we made at that time have been lifelong friends for our family. My father subsequently went and did numerous Hobarts afterwards, so without Roger and with Roger, and that led to me getting into sailing on the Wild Oats with Roger in 1993. So that's the short version, I guess.
Hicko was the sort of guy that, he had his ups and downs, and he wasn't perfect. None of us are. But I can tell you, once we got offshore and were at sea, Roger just relaxed. He was a new man. You could see here is an animal in its element, and that spread through to the crew. The 93 Hobart again demonstrated that fact. We talked to many of the other boats. They didn't eat or drink. Everyone was sick. It was just chaos. So they had to pull out. But halfway through the race, we're going across Bass Strait. I was the alternate helmsman to Hicko, so he's down below and I'm up on deck driving. And by this time the seas had, built to become quite mountainous, and you had to weave around them. Hicko's down below cooking a stew. I mean, we're talking 50-knot winds and mountainous seas, and he's cooking a stew to make sure that all of the crew are nourished. And the whole pot and the cooker, as I send it up and over one wave, the whole pot and the cooker jump off, and it's everywhere. The cooker's smashed, it's all in bits. Hicko looks around and just starts scooping it up off the floor. I can tell you that the floor of the boat wouldn't have been the world's most hygienic place. But Hicko's scooping it up back into the pot, comes down below, doesn't tell everyone. Eat up, Larry, it'll be all good. And then he's looking to put the cooker back together, and there's a bolt missing. Where's that bolt? Can't find it anyway. And all of a sudden he's eating his stew, and I'm glad it was him who nearly lost a tooth with the bolt and not me. But the crew forged on, we won the race on IOR. There were many incidents like that,
So we eventually decided to build the original Ichiban, which was, as we call it, the gold boat. And we went on and did a number of Hobarts in that boat, but also we did the IMS and IRC Australian Championships at Pittwater, and that was a great experience, and we won both. And Hicko and I, and Pete and the rest of the crew, will be, I think, the IMS Australian Championships forever, given that they probably will never hold that championships again. So a good thing to put on the CV, and a great experience with Hicko and the rest of the crew. And Hicko was wonderful at putting all the crew together and managing all the personalities. He really knew how to manage all the people of the crew, and people would. He was a great leader, and people would always do anything for Hicko. No one would ever say, "No, I don't want to do that," or people would sort of walk over broken glass because of his leadership capability. And part of that was his communication as well with the crew.
He had amazing respect for the talent in the Etchells, in division in that class. He just loved mixing in with it. It was just the cut and thrust of amazing talent out there, and he particularly had a lot of time for the young ones coming through, because they were out there challenging the best of the best. And I think I was always in awe of Roger when you saw him just come in on the port and throw Sun Tzu into the starboard lay line, and that was really his talent too. That it wasn't something that he could always commit to, but he always gave it. He was always in there with the best. And of course, you can't talk about Sun Tzu without talking about his beloved Susie, his 2-ton Isuzu flatbed truck, which he bought and modified. And it towed Sun Tzu all over the countryside to various regattas, even to the Worlds in Perth, which even had a little table and chairs, I believe.
I sailed with Hicko for 15 years along with so many wonderful and talented people. We sailed and finished 13 Hobarts together. He was a tough competitor, but he loved his fellow competitors. Only once in a decade and a half do I remember Hicko truly wanting to protest another yacht, and we couldn't find the protest flag. Sal Gordon had a red t-shirt with scissors in hand and asked for confirmation to proceed with cutting. I've never seen Hicko so indecisive. Cut it! Don't bother! Cut it! Nah! In the end, we cut the shirt but dropped the protest. And then there was Wild Rose. We sailed 6 Hobarts and many other races and regattas on the Rose. The Rose was special with a tightly knit crew. Not the easiest boat to sail, but she provided us with some of the greatest rewards.
The chance finally came for him to sail with me in my Dragon, Whimsical. I can only recount what an incredible surprise it was to me for the ability he was able to show on his knowledge of sailing a Dragon. Just to give an indication of the ability, we decided to sail in the state championships, and I have to report we won 6 races in a row, which was unbelievable.
We had 30 wonderful years, and we worked very hard together, and he was exactly the same on the water as he was in business, achieving things that even now you look back. He implemented payroll at Commonwealth Bank, 39,000 employees, and he did it in just 12 weeks. And to put that in perspective, PeopleSoft came along maybe 10 years later, and they had 20 people, and they took 2 years. So he had an incredible gift from having studied at sea, foreign going. He also studied in our business, and we're in HR, so he understood people, he understood putting the right person in the right place to do the right thing. He was asked once about, was it a problem having women on board? And he said, in the dark, they're just another person. And so he'll go on forever, and his memories will outlive all of us, I'm certain of that. But wherever he is, we all miss you.
Find something to celebrate. Well, that's just so important. To have a dream, that's why you're there.